Greetings, cherished anointed ones. Heaven can't remain sat because of certain motions. Take a time to consider that. We are discussing the type of choice that makes angels stand up. Like the loudest stadium you've ever heard. Wings are sweeping the air and shouting in appreciation. However, this wasn't about a gold medal, trophy, or Instagram-worthy triumph. You were over it. You might find this truth startling. Not every action we perform has the same impact in the invisible world. Some things hardly make a difference. Rarely, however, do a single decision or action cause the atmosphere to tremble so fiercely that heaven bursts out. What you just did was that. And the wild area of earth most likely appeared modest, peaceful, and unremarkable. The spiritual dimension witnessed the truth, whereas many around you may have said, "That's it. That's all." You made more than one move. You changed the course of your life. It wasn't louder, flashier, or dirtier play that won you the game. You triumphed because, while your opponent is still celebrating stealing your pawn, you moved like a chess master who senses that checkmate is 12 turns ahead. In case you were wondering, the angels did, in fact, defend you. This, when you consider it, is funny. When you grasp why heaven cheered, you'll realize that your final move wasn't simply a victory. Imagine celestial creatures with flawless posture suddenly standing up and saying, "Did you see that? My goodness, they did it." The sight was a spiritual one. First of all, you made a motion that the untrained eye would not have seen. Since your final action was invisible to anybody without spiritual sight, it sent shockwaves through the unseen realm even if it didn't make headlines in human regions. At first glance, it appeared to be a routine task, maybe even one that people expected you to complete anyhow. However, that action was actually well thought out, planned, and premeditated. Neither impulsiveness nor desperation gave birth to it. It sprang from a place of understanding that is inaccessible to most people. You acted without announcing it because you spotted an opportunity that no one else could. Heaven reacted so strongly because of this. Something has a way of eluding earthly resistance when it is imperceptible to the untrained sight. Your action was concealed in plain sight, because the enemy cannot attack what they do not perceive as a danger. It's possible that many around you were too preoccupied with noise, ego, or superficial drama to notice the recent change. You wanted it just that way. They didn't have to comprehend it, agree with it, or even cheer it on. All you had to do was make it, and you did it perfectly. This was not the type of activity that would make you popular or provide you with immediate approval. In actuality, it most likely appeared unimpressive or even passive to others. However, the weight of what you just disassembled was visible to the angels. When you accomplished it, they watched the shackles break. They witnessed the beginning of your future's rippling impact. Since you acted sensibly rather than emotionally, they were able to see the trap you escaped. Most people never attain the maturity needed for invisible maneuvers. Making large, expressive motions to support a statement is simple. Fighting in public, where everyone can witness your bravery, is one thing. Fighting so methodically and precisely that the adversary only learns of your victory after the war is done is quite another. That was the area in which you worked. The angels didn't only nod or grin for this reason. They got to their feet. They observed someone who disregarded the clear guidelines. Someone whose movements were so in sync with divine timing that the people knew the war had changed before anybody else did. You made more than one move. You took the initiative, and heavens ensured that it was not overlooked. Second, a link that would have bound generations was broken by you. Your actions went beyond simply resolving a personal issue. Cutting through something that had been choking your family for years, if not generations, was the goal. The majority of individuals struggle for alleviation at the surface level. They cover gaps, ignore issues, and wish for momentary tranquility. You dug deeper. Treating symptoms was not enough for you. You pursued the illness itself. Your last move had a lot of spiritual weight because of this. Chains of generations are cunning. They pass themselves off as the status quo. Thought patterns, lost cycles, self-destructive behaviors, and unwritten norms that bind a family together without ever asking why. Breaking such chains is not only difficult, but also risky because you are facing something that has been comfortably ingrained in your family for many years. It's nasty and expensive, so most people steer clear of it completely. But you made the decision that enough was enough. You didn't simply leave a poisonous cycle when you took that action. You slammed the door so firmly that it would not open again. The angels exploded for that reason. They weren't only applauding your own triumph. Everyone after you gets to go on a cleaner, more liberated road, and they were enjoying that. Your narrative wasn't merely altered by your move. The family script was rewritten. Every breakthrough of this nature has a high cost. Despite being misinterpreted and possibly even mocked by the same people you were attempting to liberate, you had to maintain your position. You were under constant pressure to either accept the status quo or just leave everything alone. You declined because you were aware that it would become more deeply ingrained in the following generation the longer you put up with it. Fighting a struggle for which you might never receive recognition requires a certain type of bravery. Even if they will never know your name in relation to it, your actions will provide more tranquility to your future children, nieces, nephews, and generations yet to be born. That's why heaven, not earth, gave the acclaim. Your broken bonds didn't simply vanish. They broke in a way that prevents them from ever being reassembled in the same manner. It wasn't simply you who won. For a whole lineage, you won. And the highest realm should give such move a standing ovation. Third, you made a motion without making a sound. You made a move without making a sound. And the key to its strength was that you made a different decision in a world where everyone announces their plans before they actually take action. You didn't give any clues. No hints were left by you. Additionally, you denied anyone the opportunity to plan a retaliation. You did nothing, and it had already been completed by the time anyone noticed what you had done. Most people will never be able to achieve that degree of discipline. Being secretive for the sake of being secret is not the goal of moving without making an announcement. Protecting the holy until it is strong enough to stand alone is the goal. In actuality, early publicity may destroy a scheme more quickly than any adversary could. Every time you make a statement too soon, you allow uncertainty, sabotage, and diversions to enter. Your motion was so tidy because you recognized this. It came into the world completely developed and free of the imprints of other people. You weren't weak by remaining silent. It was a plan. You didn't have to exalt yourself or demonstrate your superiority. When the moment came, you trusted the action to speak for itself. Your opponents were unable to plan ahead or stop you because of this. They couldn't undo anything by the time they noticed the consequences. Before they knew it had begun, the game was finished. Most people are unaware of how much power it takes to exercise this type of discipline. It entails controlling your enthusiasm when you want to express it. When someone doubts you, you have to bite your tongue. Even though you could quickly disprove them, you choose not to. It entails bearing the consequences of your choice by yourself until the appropriate time to make it public. It's difficult, but that's why it was successful. The angels saw your timing as wise. They saw that you moved precisely rather than merely moving. They saw how, by refusing to inform anybody of where your next move would land, you managed to evade traps that were prepared for you. Heaven cheered for that reason. The opposition didn't even have a chance to react due of the way you made the move, not just because you made it. Fourth, you didn't compromise your morals for a short-term victory. You had the opportunity to accept the simple victory, the sort that would have immediately silenced some detractors and made you appear good in the moment. It was within grasp, right there. You would have won quickly if you had just made a small concession and adjusted your morals somewhat to suit the circumstance. However, you didn't. You made the more difficult decision. Despite the consequences, you made the decision to uphold your integrity. It rocked the sky since such is uncommon. In actuality, transient breezes are alluring. Right now, they offer consolation, praise, and affirmation. In the moment, it may seem like you're simply being strategic or pragmatic when they mumble, "Nobody will know," or "It's not that big of a deal." But you had a deeper understanding. You have exchanged something precious for something disposable the instant you compromise your integrity. You were aware that it becomes simpler to cross that border again when you had already done so. And before long, you wouldn't even be able to identify the line. That was not a risk you took. You refused to accept flattery, bribes, or shortcuts as payment. Because they offered you anything, you refused to accept responsibility for your choices. You declined to give up your soul in order to enjoy today's victory. You were prepared to accept the short-term setback in order to preserve the irrevocable long-term triumph. That's why your move was so effective. The angels witnessed your defiance of temptation and your confident retreat from it. They saw that you considered more than just the simplest option. You pondered what lasted forever. No matter how tempting the deal, you demonstrated that your beliefs were not for sale. Making a decision like this frequently makes you appear foolish in the near run. Time will reveal the truth, even if people believe you wasted your opportunity or played yourself. Your hands would have withered from the brief when you denied. You kept what was truly important instead: your spirit, your tranquility, and your unwavering moral fiber. Because you didn't simply win for a second, it's the type of decision that makes heaven rise up and applaud. Forever, you won. Fifth, you decided to fight the fight that would eradicate the illness rather than merely its symptoms. The majority of individuals pursue what they can see. They combat the flare-ups, the evident suffering, and the surface issues that are simple to identify and assign responsibility for. This explains why so many triumphs end in failure. They are little more than a band-aid remedy. You avoided falling into that trap. Knowing that the true adversary was concealed deeper, you refused to expend energy on symptoms. You were brave and patient enough to pursue the root, despite the fact that it would make the battle more difficult, drawn out, and painful. You didn't pick a glamorous struggle. There was no immediate sense of accomplishment or acclaim. Because you didn't pursue the simple objective that everyone else was aiming for, it frequently appeared like you were losing. But you were wiser. You knew that if the path was left unexplored, the issue would continue to resurface, each time more resolute, clever, and powerful. You were prepared to take the blows, put up with the criticism, and bear the suffering because of this. You weren't only attempting to feel well right away. You were battling for enduring freedom. It takes more than just guts to go the way. Clarity is necessary. You must be able to look past deception, diversions, and even your own need for instant gratification. It entails having the foresight to know when to stop wasting energy and the self-control to stand your ground when everyone else is yelling at you to take the easy route. Because it hurts more before it gets better, most individuals avoid that type of discipline. That pain was something you accepted. You realized that if it meant permanently eliminating the cause of the issue, the short-term discomfort was worth it. It wasn't just a personal choice. It was a generational issue. You prevented the sickness from further infiltrating your life by removing it. The lives of those who will follow you were witnessed in your partnership. All of this was seen by the angels. They witnessed the wisdom in your objective and the weight you bore. They could see you were more than just trying to live. You desired true and total freedom. And heaven's cheers weren't limited to your triumph, since you battled for the cure rather than only relief. It was to ensure that what you had achieved would last. Sixth, you left without bringing the poison with you. It is one thing to leave, but it is quite another to leave in a tidy manner. The majority of individuals leave a horrible circumstance with unseen baggage, anger, animosity, and a never-ending urge to prove their correctness. Even if they physically distance themselves from the trauma, they remain emotionally bound to it. That is how the poison of the past continues to seep into the present and how resentment grows. You prevented it from occurring. You didn't simply walk away. You did not carry the infection with you when you departed. It would have been simple to repeatedly play back the crimes, to constantly reminding yourself of how unjust everything was, and to hone your speech for when you were finally able to demonstrate them. However, you didn't. You opted for peace over retribution. You choose to mend rather than hold grudges. You realize that those who have harmed you are not punished by carrying that type of poison. You are gradually destroyed by it. You had to let go of more than just individuals when you left clean. You needed to let go of your mental story, your need for a resolution that worked for you, and your hope that they would eventually own up to their mistakes and apologize. If you feel the abundance of divine love in your heart, now is the time to share it. You can help spread God's blessings by clicking the Super Thanks button on YouTube and contributing $20 or more. This divine gift will touch not only your life, but also the souls of many others through this platform. Each of you has a sacred place in God's great design, and your generosity will be the fruit of our prayers. Take action now. Share your blessings to exalt His kingdom, for you were created to do even greater things in God's loving hands. May God bless you. Dear brothers and sisters, may God's peace be with you today. I am here to remind you of a profound truth. Our existence is grounded in God's divine plan, unshaken by the world's fleeting concerns. As the Holy Bible says, everything done in faith will be rewarded by God's abundant blessings. Luke 6 verse 38. Like that mighty oak tree, our roots are deeply anchored in God's universal truth. Every step we take, every stance we hold is secured by His power. And now, you have the opportunity to be a part of this blessing. When you click this Super Thanks button and make a $100 donation, this act will return to you 100-fold. You walked away despite acknowledging that you might never experience such times. You can't fake that type of strength. You no longer feel connected to their energies when you depart without harboring resentment. You're no longer responding to them or letting their behavior influence your decisions. Stop allowing them to dictate how your life is conducted. You didn't just start a new chapter in your life. You entered it without carrying the former one's illness with you. Walking away clean is a higher-level proclamation of triumph, which is what the angels represented. Anyone can defend themselves. Anger may be held by anybody. To break free and maintain an uncontaminated heart in the process, however, requires a unique spirit. You're really untouchable at that point. It would have meant that you didn't truly escape if you had carried the poison and continued on. You denied your history the ability to follow you by choosing not to carry it. And for that reason, heaven rejoiced, not only because you went, but because you did so completely. Seventh, you ran the risk of being misinterpreted for all time. Knowing full well that many people would never perceive it for what it really was, you made a choice. You were aware that some people would misrepresent it, others would criticize it, and some would outright lie about it, regardless of how much you clarified and explained your position. And you continued. That type of bravery is uncommon. The sort that prioritizes the mission above your reputation and the truth over your image. The majority of people base their choices on how others will see them. They consider the aesthetics in addition to the result. In addition to wanting to be correct, they also want to be regarded as correct. That was not an option for you. You realized that sometimes you can't serve both image and reality simultaneously. It will always be necessary for one to yield to the other. Even if your name would be permanently scarred in certain circles, you chose truth. This went beyond simply being open to misunderstandings. It was a readiness to be misinterpreted for all time. You came to terms with the notion that some people would fabricate their own version of events and then teach it as fact. That rumors and murmurs may survive the actual events. You realized your job wasn't to correct everyone's speech, so you let them speak. It was to act morally and in accordance with your conscience. Truth is more expensive than most people think. It costs chances, relationships, and occasionally even safety. It may make you a stranger to those who previously praised you and banish you from places where you once belonged. But you don't allow your actions be dictated by your fear of that loss. You refuse to compromise your genuineness in order to gain approval. That sacrifice was seen by the angels. They witnessed the silent isolation that comes with following a road where praise never ceases, but heavenly favor never fades. They saw you remain still as lies proliferated, believing that your truth would hold up in the everlasting record. Some wins are immediately apparent. Others will only become apparent in due time. You went with the latter, even if it means being portrayed as the antagonist in another person's perspective of events. You achieved the type of victory that never goes away. And for that type of integrity, heaven stood up. You made a choice that was devoid of human approbation. Number 8. You didn't want to wow anybody here with your maneuver. It wasn't popular. It was certainly not the sort of event that people gathered to applaud, nor was it glamorous. Actually, you were aware before you took any action that the decision would most likely be overlooked or, worse, questioned by others who were not aware of it. You didn't want human praise, though. Even if no one else applauded, you were seeking alignment with virtue. The majority of individuals are motivated by recognition. They want their behaviors to be praised and reinforced by those around them, so they feel validated. That's not always a bad thing. However, when it becomes your motivation for moving, it becomes risky. That's not where you operated. You took action knowing that likes, press, or public recognition would not be your reward. You did what God demanded of you at that precise time. That type of decision-making eliminates ego, regardless of the stillness that would ensue on earth. Your motivations are revealed when you have no one to impress. You can determine if you're doing out of convenience or moral conviction. Without anyone applauding you, you've shown that you are prepared to take the difficult route. That is the ultimate expression of spiritual development. Obedience devoid of the consolation of acknowledgement. In actuality, the unseen realm is most aware of this type of maneuver. The number of your audience has no bearing on heaven. It assesses how sincere your intentions are. The angels saw that you took action without waiting for permission from the general people. They observed that you were prepared to take the chance of becoming invisible in order to maintain your divine connection. You also break away from the bonds of pleasing others when you perform actions like these. You cease to be influenced by opinions, trends, and the fleeting allure of approval. A higher, firmer compass takes its place. Because of this action was thundering in heaven even if it was quiet to the human sight. No, the audience did not give a standing ovation. One from the highest world, however, was present, and that cheer lasts a lot longer than any accolade the world could have bestowed upon you. You weren't a standalone act. You did not require it at all. A triumph like that reverberates throughout eternity. You became the perfect answer to a prayer that you didn't even ask for. Number 9. Your last move was significantly more than just a win for you. It turned into the answer to issues you were unaware existed and pleas you had never heard. The effects of your actions can occasionally stretch in ways that are impossible to quantify or forecast. You didn't just set yourself free. Unknowingly, you were the breakthrough that many had been longing for, even if those individuals were strangers or ghosts bound by invisible bonds. Most people are unable to perceive the struggles that are going on under the surface of life. People pray for answers they can't seem to find, for relief, and for change. Unbeknownst to you, your silent, thoughtful, and meaningful action answered those prayers. You unlocked doors that had been shut for years, shattered spiritual strongholds, and changed energies. Your actions had an impact on families, communities, and even worlds you were unaware were related to your fight. Because it necessitates acting out of pure harmony with what is good rather than for credit or reward, this type of invisible effect is uncommon. You didn't ask for approval or acknowledgement. Even if the conclusion was uncertain, you just trusted the process and moved in the present. The outcome exceeded your expectations and was far larger than you could have ever imagined. That's why the angels gave such a loud cheer. They observed the entire extent of your motion, how it released spirits you had never met, healed wounds you had never seen, and loosened knots in places you had never been. People and spirits who had been wailing in silence had their chains unlocked by your deed, which was like a key. A breakthrough of this nature is both a boon and a burden. It indicates that your existence is part of a larger fabric, one in which decisions you make have an impact on others besides yourself. It implies that you are a part of something big and heavenly even when you feel alone or invisible. Understanding this can alter how you view your challenges and successes. Your actions have an impact much beyond your own social group. You're doing more than simply getting by. Your faithfulness is mending entire invisible communities. Heaven's standing ovation is evidence that, even before you knew to ask, you had already transformed into what was needed. 10. When others couldn't withstand the impact, you did. Where others would have fallen, you stood. Many others around you would have been crushed, irreparably damaged, or motivated to give up when the blow struck. However, you accepted it. Because you knew deep down that you were made to bear it, you silently took on the weight of that strain and anguish. Playing the hero or displaying power was not the point here. Silently making room for what was to be done was the goal. The similar blow may have caused others to crumple, withdraw, or lose their spirit, but you stayed. You didn't just make it through the blow. You made it through it unscathed. Less hardy spirits would have been shattered by the hardships you carried. And by doing that, you paved the way for those who couldn't endure such a hardship. Even if they were unaware of it, your perseverance served as a shield for others. Most people cannot see that type of silent sacrifice. There are no applause or accolades for it. In reality, to the outside world, it frequently appears to be weakness or stubbornness. But nothing is missed in the spiritual world. Every second you maintained your composure and every ounce of suffering you endured without complaining was captured in the sky. You didn't flee the blow. You didn't try to avoid it or flinch. You faced it head-on because you knew that if you fell, everyone who was close to you would suffer far more. You possessed more than simply physical and mental strength. It had a spiritual quality. It was the sort of strength that recognizes the stakes and takes responsibility without pursuing glory. You don't use this sacrifice as a weapon or to boast about. It's a subtle yet potent aspect of your identity. The angels are aware of it. They saw you take in what others were unable to. They arose and cheered for that reason, because you used the strike to your advantage, your testimony, and your triumph rather than merely surviving it. 11. The offer that was intended to take you was rejected. You were presented with what appeared to be a fantastic opportunity, something that offered convenience, progress, or approval. It gleamed on the outside with every indication of accomplishment, the type of offer that most people would readily accept. But you were able to see past the gleam. You saw it for what it was, a leash deftly wrapped in luxury, a trap masquerading as a boon. Many would have accepted it without question, oblivious to the instant benefit and subsequent cheers. However, you declined. You realized that certain bargains have a cost that cannot be justified by wealth, prestige, or comfort. Your freedom, your honesty, and eventually your soul were all at stake. You felt it wasn't worth selling yourself out, so you decided to leave what appeared to be a victory. It's difficult to decline an offer like that. It entails standing by yourself, ignoring what others might say, and having faith that a better path exists, even if it is obscure and unknown. It entails prioritizing your inner truth over approval from others. You made a decision that shook the spiritual world, saying clearly, your worth isn't for sale, and your path can't be bought. The angels witnessed you turn down the shackles that were presented as presents. They praised your reluctance to be owned and your refusal to exchange your everlasting freedom for short-term benefit. Few people have the proclamation of sovereignty that rejection embodied. In reality, turning down what appears to be an opportunity is the start of true success, even if it frequently feels like losing. You didn't just refuse. You took back your identity from a system that was built to control you. Not only was your move courageous, it was groundbreaking. Heaven offered a standing ovation because of this, because you choose to stay valuable in a world full of people who want to be purchased. 12. You fought the one to assert your dominance. You had every justification for displaying your power. The impulse to brag, to show off every flaw in those who questioned or mistreated you, was strong and genuine. In one big exploding moment, you might have dropped truths like firebombs, destroying bridges, and clearing the air. However, you didn't. You held back because you knew something deeper, not because you were weak or hesitant. Showing off is not necessary for real power. Now is the perfect time to click the super thanks button on YouTube and share God's blessings. You can contribute to his plan and become a part of this divine mission with a donation of $100 or more. Every gift reflects God's generosity, and I believe it will return to you multiplied beyond your expectations. Remember, his protection and blessings are with you in every step you take and every donation you make. You become part of his divine plan. You are a powerful, radiant being, unshakable like his mighty rock. Witness God's miracles, feel the fruits of your generosity in your soul, and illuminate the world with this confidence and courage. Be blessed, and may the Lord's light guide your way. Most people believe that power is noisy. They believe it's about creating a stir, asserting control, or flaunting successes. However, you are more knowledgeable. You know that genuine authority is silent, stable, and unflappable. Applause and validation are not necessary for it to be genuine. Because it is based on who you are rather than what you say or do to please other people, it exists independently of recognition. It requires extraordinary willpower to resist that impulse. It implies prioritizing long-term effects over immediate gratification, knowledge over emotion, and patience over impulsive behavior. You understand that while demonstrating your might in the heat of the moment may win the battle, it may not win the war. You made the smart decision to keep your cards close to hand and let your character to gradually speak for itself. The angels cheered because they saw the distinction between a leader who commands respect by restraint and a warrior who seeks retribution. They noticed your self-assurance in the exclusive area where nobody else dared to stay. Your strength was already indisputable, therefore you didn't need to destroy anyone. It was not a sign of weakness or fear to hold back your might. It has to do with mastery. It involved understanding when to speak and when to be quiet, when to act and when to wait. Your success is not only remarkable, but also long-lasting when you have that sort of control, which is uncommon and valuable. Since you were aware that some fires create more damage than they cause light, you refrained from burning everything down. Rather, you let your strength to develop in the background, ready to be shown when the moment was appropriate. It's the mark of a truly chosen one, and that's the type of insight that makes heaven burst with cheers. 13. You didn't move on impulse, you moved in harmony. You didn't just do it because it seemed right to everyone else, or because you were feeling impulsive. You acted in accordance with something far bigger than pressure or sentiments at the moment. You waited for that profound, silent confirmation before you took action, whereas many others reacted hastily, driven by rage, fear, or despair. For this reason, what appeared to be a straightforward action to others was actually a profound change in the spiritual world. Impulse is noisy and disorganized. Although it briefly attracts attention, it frequently leads to confusion or regret. Alignment is composed and methodical. Although it could appear subtle or even imperceptible, its effects are irrefutable and long-lasting. Few people achieve the kind of spiritual maturity that you did by waiting, listening, and responding only when the time was right. You knew that hurrying puts you in the enemy's position. A divinely inspired plan might be derailed by taking action too soon or too late. As a result, you ignored the clamor, stress, and urgency that everyone else was experiencing. Rather, you trusted your inner counsel and the time of your soul. That's why the spirit world was taken aback by your move. When you did something was just as important as what you did. You evolved into a person who follows the guidance of a higher power instead of the whims of life. You had an invincible edge because of that. Even if no one on the planet knew why, you were always one step ahead. Because they saw an action made by heavenly power rather than human feeling, the angels stood and cheered. No matter how long it took, they recognized a spirit that was so tuned into the source that you could wait for the right time to act. You stood out thanks to your patience and accuracy, which transformed your action into a breakthrough that has an impact that is invisible to others. 14. The everlasting scoreboard was your game. Your last move wasn't motivated by the cheers, the immediate victory, or the instant satisfaction that everyone else was seeking. You were playing at an entirely different level. Time is measured in eternity rather than minutes or days on the everlasting scoreboard. You made a choice knowing that real achievement isn't fleeting, whereas many people strive for fleeting triumphs. It is unchangeable and permanent. Because it necessitates a change in perspective, this type of thinking is uncommon. It entails prioritizing depth over drama, purpose over popularity, and legacy over attention. This round, you weren't simply playing to win. By changing the rules in a way that would endure beyond your lifetime, you were playing to completely alter the game. Every decision you made was evaluated in light of this timeless viewpoint. You were aware that not all successes would be immediately acknowledged, and that some sacrifices would be painful at the time. However, you came to terms with it as you were engaged in a more complex game that only your soul and the angels could fully comprehend. That's why when you made your move, heaven exploded. The angels saw more than simply a victorious individual. They witnessed a spirit safeguarding an untouchable future. They witnessed someone who remained focused on what really important in the big picture, rather than being sidetracked by fleeting applause or the opinions of the crowd. Your move is a seed sown for centuries as you play for the eternal scoreboard, a solid basis that is unshakable. It implies that your triumph will be recited in tales for a very long time, impacting persons you may never have met, but that you have nevertheless impacted. You opted for durability over popularity, legacy over fad, and depth over flash. You thought beyond the clock and played a game that no one else was willing or able to perceive, which is why angels stood up for your move. You just saw actions that rocked worlds beyond human perception because they were so profound and firmly anchored in heavenly understanding. Every move you did wasn't just a response or a short-lived triumph. It was a masterful performance on a plane where purpose and eternity collide. By denying soul-damaging shortcuts, choosing conflicts that heal rather than comfort, and shattering bonds that tie generations, you moved softly but strongly. You took on responsibilities that others couldn't handle and left without the poison they thought you would keep. Knowing that truth frequently stands alone, you ran the danger of being misinterpreted, yet you never faltered. You made choices that received standing ovations in heaven, but no acclaim here on earth. Your authority was demonstrated by alignment, restraint, and an unwavering focus on what really matters, not by spectacle or noise. The lasting legacy, not the short-term victory. This is the chosen one's blueprint. those whose integrity is unassailable, whose triumphs reverberate long after the game is over, and who compete for the everlasting scoreboard. The last thing you did wasn't merely a move. It was an affirmation of your alignment with a greater mission, bearing a weight and knowledge that, even in quiet, demands respect. Keep this in mind. What you've done might never be completely seen or understood by the world. That doesn't lessen its impact, though. The angels witnessed it. Heaven rejoiced, and the force of your soul will last eternally. Stand boldly knowing that your journey is characterized by eternal victory, profound courage, and divine strategy. Now is your moment. They've already started the standing ovation. Make sure you don't miss what's next if this message resonated with you and you're prepared to take charge of your own heavenly path. To remain up to date on the knowledge and insights that are transforming lives, click the subscribe button immediately. If this video touched you, please like it to express your support. It also helps more individuals find the power that is waiting for them. Do you wish to contribute your ideas, insights, or discoveries? Please leave a remark below. Perhaps your tale is just what someone else needs to hear right now. Additionally, share this video with anybody you know who is undergoing personal transition. Sometimes everything changes when the proper message is delivered at the right moment. We're working together to create a community of unstoppable, spiritually linked individuals. Don't only observe from a distance. Become a part of this great movement by joining us. One click might lead to your next big discovery. May you be blessed.